Hey everybody, so this is going to be my tutorial on how to process this image, which is a flash ambient composite, and we are going to start in Lightroom and then make our way into Photoshop and then back into Lightroom to do our final adjustments. So let's go ahead and start off with our pre-processing. So this image is really flat, really boring, kind of lifeless, and not too pleasing to look at. So we're going to go ahead and select all these images. Make sure auto sync is turned on. You just go ahead and click this little toggle right here. And we're going to start with our white balance. So I always change my white balance to auto. That is pretty much my entire look is just auto white balance, that warm kind of look, because for some reason Lightroom really likes warm images when it comes to white balance. So I don't know. I don't know why it does that, but I like the way it does it. And contrast, I go with 30. Highlights, I go negative 45. Shadows, plus 60. Texture, plus 15. Clarity, plus 15. Saturation, plus 30. HSL, we'll go into our saturation tab. And we'll go to the oranges, negative 15 in the oranges. Go to detail, and we want to make our sharpening amount 45 with a radius of 1.5. And our noise reduction luminance value is 45 as well. Color, 90. Smoothness, 90. Lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration, and enable profile corrections. If you're making this into a preset, I would suggest setting the setup from default to auto. That will allow you to select multiple images that have different lenses and apply the preset, and it will detect which lens you're using. So if you have auto sync turned on and let's say this image had like a Tamron lens and this image had like a Canon lens, if you had it set to default, it wouldn't know. It would basically set the image that you have selected to that profile that's on screen right now. So if it was the Tamron, it would set it to the Tamron for all of them instead of going auto and detecting which lens is actually the right lens. So we're going to go ahead and take these into Photoshop, and we're going to go ahead and edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So while this opens up, I'm going to be talking about my flash placement. Now it's a bit interesting because I don't see a lot of people doing it. It's called the side to side method. It's pretty interesting to me because it's basically taking your image and piecing it out to where every image relies on left and right. So the left side will get lit up by flashing the right side, and vice versa. And that I do that for every room that I can think of. And I do it for this room, and I do it in two parts. I do it with this living room, and then I do it with this back kitchen. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of our layers by holding down Alt Command A. That's going to select all of our layers, and we want to reverse them by going to Layer, Arrange, Reverse. And we'll go ahead and disable everything except for these bottom two. And we will bring in the opposite half of this, which is this layer right here. I'm going to bring that down, and we're going to add a layer mask, just a plain old white layer mask. And we will go ahead and go to our brush tool. Make sure our mode is set to normal, opacity at 100, flow at 30, and smoothing at 0. And we'll go ahead and use the bracket keys to make our brush just a little bit bigger. I think that's a little bit too big. And we will go ahead and make sure our swatches are set to our default. So we will just click on this little button right here. And we can go ahead and hit X on the keyboard. That'll swap the swatches to whichever ones you have set. So let's go ahead and paint black on this layer. And just painting a little bit. I think that looks pretty good. If we look at our layer mask by holding down Alt and clicking the layer mask, You can see it's just a basic gradient. And we'll go ahead and just finish this up right here. And we'll take this bottom layer, which is our base, and we will put that into darken mode and normal mode by duplicating. So we'll go ahead and hit Command J on our keyboard. That makes a copy of our layer, and we'll turn that off. And we'll take the original layer, set the blend mode from normal to darken, and we'll put a black mask on that by holding down Alt or Option and then add layer mask. Simple enough. And we'll use our bracket keys to resize our brush. And then since we're still on black from our previous edit, we need to hit X and swap to white. And we'll just paint a little bit right there. Cool. Now what we can do is we can use this layer to fix the fan, because you can see the fan is ghosting. So we'll go ahead and hit Alt on our keyboard and add a layer mask. So it adds a black layer mask. Cool. Make sure we are flow 30%. And we will resize this, and I'm just resizing it differently with Control Alt and left clicking. That'll allow you to resize and change your hardness. So it's just a different method. You can always do the bracket keys if you prefer. So we'll just go ahead and paint that and swap back. Cool. Let's go ahead and paint white right there. And I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, not too bad. Now we'll take these two layers, which are our kitchen, and we will add a layer mask to the top one, and we will swap our swatches back to black. We'll just paint out this area. So now we should be good to go for the kitchen. So now we'll group those two layers, Command G, and set this from pass through to lighten. And we'll add a layer mask, a black layer mask. And now we can go ahead and just paint. And now we can go ahead and just paint a little bit more over here. So I think that looks pretty good. If you want, you can experiment with screen blend mode. In my case, it's a little bit too bright, so we'll go with lighten. Nice. So now we can go ahead and blend the ambient in. And the ambient is super easy. I don't bother just brushing or anything like that. I just set the blend mode to luminosity, set the opacity to 50%. And then I do a little bit of brushing just in case the highlights are a little bit too much. So I go ahead and just add a regular layer mask. Use our brush tool by hitting B on the keyboard. Resize, make sure we're on black. And we'll just paint a little bit. Just a smidgen. Okay. Let's see what's wrong with this. So we have a little bit of ghosting, and I realize that's from our lighten layer. So we'll just paint that out. Awesome. So now what we want to do is kind of just balance out the exposures. It's a little bit kind of, we got bright areas over here, we got dark areas over here. It's just not flowing for me. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift, Alt, or Option, Command E. That's going to make a stamp visible layer. So now what we can do is go to Select, Color Range, and uncheck Localize Color Clusters. We're going to select a dark area. And we're just going to make sure our feather is about 120. And I don't need to brighten up the floor, so I will actually turn this on. And we'll just add, by using this Add to Samples eyedropper, we'll just add some areas that we think are a little bit dark. And then we can use the subtract and then subtract any areas that we find too bright. So I think that looks pretty good. Click OK. And we're just affecting this area. Now what we want to do is hit Function, Shift, F6. And we'll set the radius to 120. Click OK. And Command M brings up the levels. And we'll just sample with the hand tool right here. We'll just sample an area right here and drag up. Just like so. Cool beans. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that. And I'm going to go ahead and go to Control U, brings up hue and saturation. And I'm going to bring up the saturation of the yellows just so they're more consistent with what we're doing. So click OK. And now we should have a balanced image. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit bright up here, so we'll take care of that. Let's go to color range. Make sure our fuzziness is set lower because this is a smaller area. Click OK. Function Shift F6. And we'll set that to 120. And we'll just use the hand tool, select this area, and darken it. Nice. Command D, deselects. So as you can see, our exposure is a lot more balanced. Awesome. So now what we can do is just right click, flatten image, Command S to save back into Lightroom, and then bring it back into Lightroom. And I think it's a little bit bright, so we'll bring this down. And we can just fiddle with it. So I like a little bit darker images because I like the way the image just it just gets more dense, and I like it, as opposed to this, which is a little bit hazy, a little bit more rich, a little bit more vibrant. Go to Effects, Post Crop Vignetting, set the amount to -15. Ooh, -15. Now just a little bit of a, tick this on and off, just a little bit of a edge darkening. Go back to basic, and I want to add just a hair more contrast. So I'll add 30 in the contrast, and I will bring up the white point just a bit, maybe do about like 20. And I think that's looking really good. Yeah, I dig that. So let's go to Crop Tool and set the ratio to 4:3. I like a taller aspect ratio. I don't know about you guys, but that's just me. Hit return to confirm that. Go to go to transform and hit vertical, and that verticalizes. I'm not sure if that's a word. And we have our image. So that's pretty cool. If you guys have any comments, questions, advice, anything like that, just don't be afraid to reach out to me. Thanks.